Welcome back to Be the Change podcast with me, Stephanie Howlett, CEO of Diversity NL. Have a listen as we explore real life, vulnerable topics on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Become awakened, create culture of inclusion, be brave, have impact by being an ally. Explore how you can be the change that you always wanted to be. We respectfully acknowledge the territory in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, and the island of Uktamaguk as the ancestral homelands of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. We'd like to recognize the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and Nunatukavut and the Innu of Nitassinan and their ancestors as the original people of Labrador. We open our hearts and minds as we strive for respectful relationships with all First Peoples of this province. We search for collective healing and true reconciliation as we honor this beautiful land together and commit ourselves to being stewards who will respect the cultures, traditions, and ceremonies of all who call it home. Welcome back to Be the Change podcast. Today we have a special guest, Tera McDonald. Welcome, Tera. I'm so delighted you're here today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So a little bit about you. So you are a proud owner of Gal-a-wikk, which is amazing, by the way. Congratulations. A new consultant within our space of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and anti-racism. I'm so excited for you. And you have an upcoming micro gallery. Like, I want to know all about this. It's amazing. I love it. So you've transitioned after somewhere around 20 years in communications education to being your own consultant. That's very brave space, by the way. I love it. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. A bit about me. I am from Newfoundland and Labrador. I grew up on the west coast of the island portion in a small community called St. George's, and spent my whole life there basically. Like everybody, went off to school to do, the push in the 90s was make sure you get a university degree. And so that's what I did. And when I got that degree, I went, oh, wow, what do I do now? And the answer that comes back very quickly is you should teach. So I got an education degree, started teaching, and found out very quickly I had very little patience for parents. And that I did not want to teach anybody who basically had a guardian or a parent who was going to have to come to the school and talk to me. I didn't enjoy that part. I also didn't like the after school activities I was supposed to, take care of. But that led to me looking at different opportunities, which then came in the form of teaching adults. And given my English and history degrees and education background in a high school system, the transition into teaching at College in North Atlantic was pretty easy. I think I started in 2005, which means that the shortest amount of my career was spent in high school and younger. And then I just didn't leave. I spent quite a bit of time bouncing around to different campuses and finally ended up in the Prince Philip Drive campus in St. John's, and moved to this area in 2012 and spent, the next 10-ish years working in that space, and got to a point, perhaps there are other people in different careers who have this exact same feeling. Got to a point where I realized, okay, all right, this is so far into the pension. Do you want to do this for the next, 10 years or so for this pension? And I very quickly realized that I didn't. It was not a system that I wanted to stay in. And even though I don't think I'll ever leave education, and certainly being a consultant and being a facilitator, I use those skills and those experiences and take that into those spaces with me. So I don't think I'll ever not be a teacher, but being a consultant and working in a space that means so much to me, I just feel a lot more satisfaction at the end of the day. I feel like there's a greater impact, and I have the ability to really craft a space for people to learn something that is going to be beneficial to them. I know I'm going off about education, but it has obviously been a large part of my life. And I think that comes from being Indigenous and my Mi'kmaq ancestry. My whole experience growing up was with an understanding that storytelling is how we learn and how we share information with other people. And that part of my culture, and I was lucky enough to grow up in that, not knowing that at the time, but knowing it now, that ability to relay information through a story is definitely a bonus, I guess, to the skills that I bring to what I do now.
Absolutely. You talked about pension. I think we were probably kindred spirits, because same thing. When you feel locked into a system, that you feel that you can be a change maker and you can do things externally to a system sometimes. And the freedom that it brings, of course, when you're a consultant, and all the different fantastic organizations you get to work with, and the people you get to collaborate with, and all those sorts of things is very exciting to me, I guess, as a consultant. And we've got the benefit of working together on something in the past, and on a panel discussion, and just getting to see, I guess, planting seeds, I think, with people that we get to have fantastic conversations with. Tell me a little bit about some of the seeds that you hope to plant with some of the future and some of the organizations that you're working with.
That's a very good question. I think I've always thought of it more so as suggestions than seeds. I think coming from, the benefit of being older, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the benefit of being older is the ability to look back and, what as a child and as, a teenager, I saw many, many times as, well, just tell me what I'm supposed to do, or just explain this in a way that, I'll know where the direction that I'm supposed to go. What I didn't understand then was the very cultural behavior of showing somebody a different way of doing things, or suggesting different things, and letting people make choices based off of what they're doing. I'm not saying my parents weren't strict, because they were, but a lot of the time you were kind of just expected to know what you were supposed to do, which can be really frustrating in youth. But as you're surrounded by, family, at least in my experience, as I was surrounded by my family, and they were constantly, demonstrating, well, here's how you adult, so to speak. Looking back on it, I go, oh, okay, those were suggestions. Those were, hey, you're going to make your choices, but here's some suggestions. And one of my mom's most famous quotes that she still says to this day, and I still roll my eyes like I'm 16, but she always said, you can do whatever you want, but you have to deal with the consequences. Man, that used to kill me as a kid. But as an adult, now I actually sit down and think about it. I'm like, oh, okay, I can do what I want. I'm an adult. I have the agency to do what I want, but I have to deal with the consequences. So getting back to what seeds or suggestions am I putting into the world, is the suggestion that, hey, we can keep going in this direction of a very colonized system. Or might I suggest that there might be an alternate? We can look at the outcomes of what we've reaped from this process so far, and we can maybe accept that there might be a different way. I don't ever go into a space, and I'd imagine you don't either, go into a space and say, this is how you have to do things. Because, it kind of flies in the face of everything that we're about, which is creating space. So what I like to think that I do, and I hope I do, is that I provide a safe space for people to explore what those suggestions might be and what those suggestions might end up having in terms of impact on their day-to-day life, their work life, their friendships, their experience of the world, really. Because when we limit ourselves into one system and we limit ourselves into a very narrow approach to perspectives, we're not seeing everything. We don't get to experience, I think, the complete joy of humanity. That sounds so deep and so pretentious almost, but all I mean to say is that when we limit ourselves that way, we're closing ourselves off to people, to groups, to perspectives, to knowledge, and that's a really self-limiting space. And I guess I like to suggest or plant the seeds that, hey, this stuff over here, possibly very cool and neat, non-threatening, maybe you want to think about it. So kind of take all that stuff and then create a space in which somebody can let their guard down just long enough that they can experience that.
Can we talk a little bit about, if someone was listening, because not all organizations have the benefit of getting consultants like you and I in to have fruitful conversations to create that space. Might there be a little bit of information we can share with them about, besides Google, of course? I mean, they can Google, things that they can do, action plans, truth and reconciliation. There are a few little potential suggestions that we can share with them about, what are some things that you can look at within your organization, some different areas of doing things potentially a little bit different.
Well, organizations can look at, well, what are you doing for Truth and Reconciliation Day? Is that a work day? Is that a day that you're going to offer that your employees can take that day? Do you have plans to, have you explored plans and what you might do on that day to honor the purpose of it? So that's a very structural systemic thing that can be done. And something that I always talk about is, go into your supply chain inside of your business. So boring, I know, but go into your supply chain and try to discover if any of the businesses you do business with are Indigenous owned. And ask yourself, have you ever thought about engaging Indigenous businesses? Are you aware of Indigenous businesses in your environment? I had a really upsetting conversation with someone earlier this week regarding Indigenous entrepreneurs. This was a funder. They said that they had, they have businesses that were owned by Indigenous people, and they didn't want to tell anyone that they were Indigenous. And as soon as he said that, I knew immediately why that person would not want people to know. And it's because not everybody, that's a broad and horrible statement, but many people think that, Indigenous entrepreneurs are given their business. They're given all the money to do everything. They don't pay tax. They just take, they don't give, which is a really sad perspective to have. So I would think that any organization that perhaps couldn't have a consultant such as you or I come in to talk about Indigenous groups or any other marginalized groups, start there. Start looking at what you're doing internally that you have the information for. Is HR tracking how many people inside of the organization identify as Indigenous? Some people don't even have it, don't even have a way to record that. What kind of do you even know? When you send out recruitment, where are you sending the information? Are you sending it to the Nunatsiavut and Nunatuavut and Innu First Nation? Are you sending recruitment documents to these organizations to disseminate through their population? Are you sending it to Qalipu First Nation? Like, it's just small little questions, and of course, the one I always ask people at your last meeting, if you looked around, are there any Indigenous people in the room? If there's not, why not? And you did and Stephanie, I think you did a really good job of this at a panel that you organized that I was very grateful to be part of. When you showed the image of a boardroom with all white men at the table, who's at your table and who's making decisions? Why is it that way? Have you walked into that same room and thought every single time there's no problem here? And if that's the case, why do you think it's okay to have only one perspective? So there's lots of little questions I think that organizations can ask internally. Of course, I could probably also give a very long list of books and blogs and things that people could read, but that would be very long.
That's good. It's a good start of getting people to think, what are we doing organizationally? And I talk a lot about as well supplier diversity. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's the simple things that we do. For instance, on a Friday, like today, when we're eating out, or if you eat out, who do you support when it comes to that? It's just small pieces, like what part of the historically excluded communities are you supporting, right? So it's like when you look around, who do you support? Because we all vote with our money, right? Either professionally, business-wise, or personally. So looking at all those sorts of things, right? Like you said, with your artwork, who's on your wall? Like who's the artist on your wall? Who do you support? Right. So looking at that, and speaking of artists and walls, you got a micro gallery that I know you're excited to talk about, and I can't wait to see it when it's finished and up and running. So a micro gallery. So tell us a little bit about that.
I very strongly believe that when marginalized groups enter into the marketplace, it is our perspectives that is the true gift, I'm going to say, because every business has the same function. It's to go out, get clients, make money. Every business does that. It's how our society runs. However, when you take somebody in a marginalized group, you are taking somebody who is coming with all of the perspectives and all of the different ways of knowing and doing that their culture has taught them. And I realized as I was developing Gal-a-wikk to be a DEI consulting business that, yes, I was going to make money. That was the purpose of the business. But how was I helping my community? And it bothered me. It bothered me a lot. And it kept me up at night. I was like, okay, so what are you going to do? How is it that Gal-a-wikk becomes not only a way that you have an income and you can, have a life that you want to live and enjoy, not making the pension, and how can you do that and balance that with your strong feelings of wanting to build community? And I realized a few things. I realized that Newfoundland and Labrador does not have a dedicated contemporary Indigenous art gallery. And that bothered me. And then I thought, well, I started a business because I made a decision. So who's to say I can't decide to start a gallery? Lots of people have galleries. Why not start, a gallery under Gal-a-wikk that can kind of provide space for contemporary Indigenous artists in Newfoundland and Labrador, and hold that space as a decolonized art gallery, because we do have amazing partners and amazing spaces throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. The Labrador Interpretation Center that houses Innu and Inuit art. We have the Damastuit Museum, which is in Central. These are, of course, seasonally run. And then we have the museum here in St. John's, the Rooms, that houses, a variety of Indigenous artifacts as well as exhibits. But all of those spaces are through a colonial lens and through the colonial attitudes towards how you're supposed to display art, how you're going to experience art. There is a project that happened on the West Coast in the city of Corner Brook. Jordan Bennett, who is a very accomplished Mi'kmaq artist, painted a mural in Crow Gulch, and many people do not know what Crow Gulch even happens to be. But in the act of putting that piece of artwork in a historically damaging space, there's a reclamation to that, and it's visible. It's open to the elements. It's raw, and really, to me, I have such a deep sense of gratitude for the work that he's done, because it opens a wider conversation for people to ask, well, why do we care about Crow Gulch? Why why did you take such a beautiful thing and put it in such a, harsh environment where it's going to degrade over time and it's going to be exposed to the wonderful wild weather of the West Coast? So those types of questions get to happen because it's a decolonized space. And when we create spaces that are decolonized, the conversation of the Indigenous community can come through strongly instead of it being filtered by that colonial lens. That is a lot of information, so I hope that I shared it well, but that's what I would like to do. I would like to provide a space in which we can have a different type of conversation about Indigenous art, where there isn't a colonial committee that says, well, this is art, but this is not. And that I think that we need to create more space. So if somebody were to come to the gallery when it is finished, they would come and be a guest of their bougie auntie, which would be me. And they would be invited to experience the artwork and then to sit and have tea and have conversations about Indigenous people in our province, and perhaps walk away with a better understanding, or at least some new knowledge about who lives here, and the ways in which we interact with the world around us, and then represent it through our artwork.
I love that.
That was long.
That is amazing. No, but it has to be, I think, to explain a little bit better to those listening what it looks like, what it's going to feel like, what it's, because it's going to be different than anything that probably most of us have ever experienced before.
I'm really, and this because we've had this conversation, but I'm currently very focused on what the flooring should look like, and That is a bit of a challenge for me right now. So that'll tell you exactly how far along Gal-a-wikk Micro Gallery happens to be. But I do have artists that are interested in having their work there. So it gives me hope and focus.
Absolutely. I'm sure Gal-a-wikk, it has a transcending name. It means something that potentially I don't know about, and certainly our audience may not. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I haven't really told anybody the true origin of my logo and name. So I'm going
your secret.
to
Our secret.
It's our secret. We can't tell anyone.
Okay.
Because this will not only age me for sure, but it will also make me a big sap. So one of my very favorite, like I had a couple of favorite Disney movies when I was younger, as we all do. And I I was a huge fan of Aladdin. Huge. I just thought it was great. Used to sing all the songs, loved it. And the diamond in the rough was always a phrase that stuck with me and was kind of a much more formative experience for me than I'd like to admit. But I've always viewed a diamond as something that is precious and something that is rare and can exist in the most difficult of spaces. And so when I was thinking about a consulting name, and of course, the first thing that came to my mind was diamond, not only for the Aladdin reference, but because, a cut diamond with all of its different facets and the sparkle, and we get to see all the color and, the beautiful, charming thing about diamonds is that when the light hits it, it's just pretty. And so I love the facets. I love the idea that there are different facets in your life, that even your own personal identity is multifaceted in that you have different layers, you have different angles to you. And if you're in the right situation, if you are a diamond in the rough and you're put in the right situation and the light hits it, that it becomes something very, very beautiful. And so in that very sappy Disney origin way, I decided that I wanted the word diamond in my business name in some way. And I don't know if you've ever looked at the number of people who have the word diamond in their consulting business, but it's a substantial amount. I am not unique. Many people fell in love with Aladdin, apparently. So then I thought, well, I do have a burgeoning second language in Mi'kmaq. And so what if the word for diamond was not overly complicated? And I, did some research and came across the word Gal-a-wikk. And I thought, okay, so sure, it's begins with a K, and everybody will call it Kalawikk, which is fine. But I think I'm going to go for it. And I broke every rule. I also have a diploma in graphic design. And one of the things we learned in web design and in counseling our clients was to make sure that the name of their business wasn't spelled weird, that it was easily pronounceable.
Check.
And that people wouldn't have trouble finding it on the internet. Well, and I broke every one. I was like, you know what? I don't care. The people who care will know. The people who care, the people who are aligned with the things that I'm doing, they will figure it out, because we will have conversations. I will make space for people to learn. And at the end of the day, everybody who engages with my business can walk away and say they know one word in Mi'kmaq, which is Gal-a-wikk, which means diamond.
That's a great story. I love it.
Yeah, it was a secret.
Okay, until now.
Until now.
No, I do love it though. It's you give a lot of thought into a whole bunch of different areas of your business and how you want to present yourself. I think forward facing, inward facing, and all those things, which to be honest, not all businesses do that when you start to create logos and designs and all those stuff. So good on you. Good on you. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I am very well known for my overthinking. So I'll take it as a positive in this case. No doubt.
It is. It is. I think being creative is a thing that you get to do and I think you're a local change maker within our province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I think that creative abilities that comes out within design, within thought processes, within engagements. And I think those who will have the opportunity and pleasure to engage with you in the future will see that. So if folks want to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect in and get in touch with you?
I think I've pretty easily found on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a really great connection point. And they can search just my name, which is a lot easier, somewhat easier to spell than my business name. But if they wanted to reach me directly, they could go to my webpage, which is KALAWIKK.com. And there is a contact form on that page. And I would think that those are probably the best two spaces to connect. And yeah, basically, yeah, I'm going to go with that because it's the easiest way to find me.
Perfect. So just so folks know that your first name is spelled Tera, because sometimes there might be some confusion there. So let's go with that as well. And any final thoughts before we close off today's session?
I think I would like to say, just circling back to organizations and what they can do. I can appreciate that, you know, as businesses, we all have our budgets. We all have certain amounts of money that we can place in certain areas. So, like you mentioned, engaging a consultant can be very difficult. When it comes to Indigenous community, and if you are curious about Indigenous community, I would highly recommend tuning in to the events that are announced through First Light. First Light is St. John's Friendship Center. It is not the only Indigenous Friendship Center in Newfoundland, Labrador, but it is the largest and in our area. So people can reach out to the Friendship Center in Goose Bay as well. There's also a Friendship Center in Stephenville, People of the Dawn Indigenous Friendship Center. They do amazing, beautiful things. Just tune into their events and then find spaces where you can attend as a guest, as a participant, just so that you can find out a little bit more. Some things, I should point out that some things are not always open to the public. Some things are ceremony based and not appropriate for people not of our culture to be there. But there are plenty of open sessions on a variety of conversations. For example, about 2 weeks ago here in St. John's, we had two-eyed seeing and two-eared listening, which was Dr. Elder Albert Marshall, who is the creator of Two-Eyed Seeing as a concept, and Chief Measle Joe from Gal-a-wikk. They were here. They gave a beautiful talk. It was open to the public. I think it was hosted by Restorative Justice NL, which is an Indigenous-based group here. It was open. It was beautiful. Wonderful sharing. I was in one of the sessions, and I can say that the vast majority of the room seemed to be allies. So find those spaces, attend, engage. And I would say that's also very similar to, say, any of the Pride events that are happening throughout the province in June and probably onwards into July, particularly here in St. John's due to scheduling.
I think it's due to the weather, but
it could be. But, these events are probably going to continue to go on throughout the summer. So find spaces that are open and go and get comfortable. Get comfortable listening, and when the time is right, engage in the way that makes you feel comfortable. I feel sometimes that people make they place barriers on themselves when I would suggest that many marginalized groups can be quite open to welcoming people into the space, and you just have to go show up.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, and happy Pride Month, and thank you for being on today's podcast. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us today. Comment below, subscribe, connect with me at stephanie@diversitynl.com or on LinkedIn. Be the change.